Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 2 of Under the Influences. I am your host, Jon Phipps, and for those of you who are new to Under the Influences, this is a show where I sit down with various guests and talk about a band that helped shape them. In other words, a band that had them under the influence. And we will talk about that band, and then we will talk about the guest's favorite album from said band. And before I introduce our guest, I have just a few things to say. Thanks, as always, to Renee Jaworski and Dennis Tardon for making all of this possible. We are recording this on Friday, January 14th, 2021, and it has been a very busy day for all of us, but we are here, we are thriving, we are kicking ass, and we are celebrating a Georgia Bulldog National Championship. What? 41 years in the making, but it's here, and we got it. So, there's only one thing better than a Georgia National Championship, and it is getting to talk to the guest I have here, and it's one Tom talking about another Tom. So, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll, please. None other than Tom Cheshire.
Hello there.
Howdy, sir. Lovely to see you again.
Congratulations, Georgia.
Yes.
Congratulations to you and anyone. Well, listen, I was excited to see them win as well. I mean, that was amazing.
Yes, it was.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I love your new show. I love everything you, Renee, and Dennis are doing, and I love the idea of this Under the Influences. It's awesome. I loved the first episode. It was great.
Yes, and the premiere episode with our beloved Renee Jaworski. By the way, she's in the comments and tagging up a storm. Thank you, Renee. We love you.
Renee is my hero for 2021.
Yes, she
Legend.
is. She's
epic.
Oh God. And here's, well, never mind. I could go an hour and a half about that. So we are here. It is none other than the legendary Tom Cheshire talking about another famous Tom, though I don't think this Tom is as famous as this Tom is.
No, not at all. But you want to know something? It gives you inspiration, and it makes you work hard. You know.
No, I was saying that the Tom we're talking about ain't as famous as you.
Oh, goodness gracious! Well, listen, that's very, very kind.
So we are gathering here tonight to talk about Tom Waits, and I have a confession.
Yes.
I have a confession, but also sort of a revelation as to where I want this show to go. My confession is this, and Tom might leave the interview entirely when I say this, but I am not a particularly big Tom Waits fan.
No, that's fine.
This show, no. This show is I designed it to have everyone talk about their influences, but also in a way for me to challenge my music taste, to expand them. And I think this would be a perfect way to go about it. So we'll start at the top of things. How did you first become a fan of Tom Waits? When would this have been?
I can tell you that. First of all, no, I would never walk out of a conversation with you because I love our conversations. And two, I think there's two magic things can happen in the show that you and Renee started. One is your first episode where you both can just talk about how much you love a record. And the other would be you interview someone like me who we become friends and we're fans of each other. And then I could tell you some things about the person that you maybe not the biggest fan of or that you're not that familiar with. And then you walk away going, hey, wait a minute, that one song, I do want to check out. I want to dissect it and listen to it because I like what Tom Cheshire said about it. So
Mhm.
I think that's wonderful. I'm glad that makes this episode, I think, even more special.
Mhm.
Um, I can tell you exactly how I discovered Tom Waits, and it's wonderful because it actually segues into the album we're going to talk about.
Okay.
I first heard the song, so I was definitely a kid who, shaved his head and bleached it and was listening to, I guess, more new wave bands and goth bands as a teenager in New York City. And the song. I heard the song "Downtown Train," but not by Tom Waits, and it was written by Tom Waits. And I did not hear the Rod Stewart version either. I heard it by a singer by the name of Patti Smythe, not Patti
Mm.
Smith, the wonderful Patti Smith who did Horses, but Patti Smythe, who had a band called Scandal. You may know the song she had called You Are the Warriors." Um, she had a solo record in like 1986 or 1987 with her own cover of the song "Downtown Train" on it. And my cousin Vinny, funny enough, in New York, I had a cousin Vinny who had the tape in his boombox, and he played that tape, and that song was on it, and I absolutely loved her cover of "Downtown Train." Although if I listened to it now, I probably wouldn't. But I thought it was her song, and I was like, man, this song is so great. It's just everything you want in a song, and so that was in like 1986 or 1987. Um, Fast forward a few years later, late 80s, early 90s, and I'm trying to expand my palette as a reader, as a writer, as a fanatic of the arts. And I discovered I was trying to expand, like I said, expand my horizons and things that I listened to. And I discovered a lot of, I guess at the time they were called like maybe leftist or left of center, musicians who basically would never be to the mainstream. Maybe it was because their voice was too rough, or there was something about them that just never made it. It wasn't accessible to the mainstream. And through that, I discovered bands like the Butthole Surfers, who I still love to this day, and bands like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and his band before that, The Birthday Party, and Leonard Cohen. All of these people I still love to this day. And one of those people was Tom Waits. And that's when I heard the original version of "Downtown Train," and I was blown away by it. And it did everything for me, and it was everything that I want in a song. It was poetry in motion. It had soul to it. It told a story, and there was hooks in the right places, and the closing of the song made complete sense. And then that made me dive into everything that he had done, and I realized that he had two careers. And we're lucky in this life as artists if we have one halfway decent career, but he had two careers in the 70s where he very much was like a beatnik, spitting and scatting to jazz music and talking about walking down the street and wanting scrambled eggs, and somehow making it sound very cool. And then early 80s he met his wife, Kathleen Brennan, who had an amazing taste in music and turned him on to people like Harry Partch and Howling Wolf, the blues artist, and certainly Captain Beefheart. And I think that's when he just said, "I'm going to remake myself." And his first three albums going in that direction were, and a lot of people call them a trinity, and they kind of bounce around on the same story. And it was Swordfish Trombones. The second one was Raindogs, which we'll talk about later, which is my favorite album. And the third one was called Frank's Wild Years. So that's a little history on how I discovered him.
So you mentioned Downtown Train. What other songs early on hooked you by Tom Waits?
Oh, okay. So, Swordfish Trombones, the song Swordfish Trombones is amazing song. Like each of his songs, he really does this magical thing where he tells a story. He's a wonderful storyteller, wonderful lyrics, and I think he actually he has a million wonderful quotes, over the years. I think he probably could have had another job as being in a circus or being a performer or a comedian, because he's very witty And he's known for saying, I love beautiful melodies telling me horrible things."
That's a damn good quote.
It's a
I love
wonderful quote. He's got so many wonderful quotes, and that is another thing. So it wasn't just the songwriter; it was the whole package. The guy looked cool, at that time. So early '80s, he had moved from California, was living in New York City, and hanging out in the streets with guys like Basquiat and Jim Jarmusch. I mean, you can't get much cooler than that. And at least the stories I hear now, or I mean, I was a kid when he was doing that. Going to secondhand stores and buying like old man suits, and personally himself with paintbrushes, painting pinstripes on them and making his own clothes, and then basically making music with not your traditional instruments. Maybe there'd be an upright bass and a guitar, but there'd be an old out-of-tune piano in the corner, and people using hubcaps and license plates and slamming refrigerated doors for percussion, and that was huge for me, especially on those first three records. Frank's Wild Years, he has a song called Telephone Call from Istanbul. It's like, what does that even mean? But he's saying, I got a telephone call from Istanbul. But he goes, but one of the lines in it, he goes, never trust a man in a blue suede coat, never drive a car when you're dead. And it's just like, what? And so there's, as serious as some of the songs can be and sad and heartbreaking, there's also an element of like, don't take yourself too seriously. There's a lot of humor in the songs as well, and which I think I've read a lot of interviews with him over the years. His first he broke his he earned his got his chops. His first few years of touring, he had to open up for Frank Zappa. And some people love Zappa and some people hate him. But what a weird sense of humor, but an insane talent. And he talked about it was wonderful. And it was like, talk about cutting your teeth, but it was the worst because Zappa fans were there to see Zappa and they're throwing tomatoes at him. And he learned to not take himself too seriously and just have a good time and laugh at all the stuff.
So you may have already answered my next question, but what was it about Waits that just sold you on?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, well, I you're talking about how we can go on sometimes about certain subjects for 6 or 7 hours. He certainly is one of those people. I could say more. Again, is a lot of the just the one-liners and the quotes. I remember when he put out a record called Mew Variations in the late '90s. He had to do press for it, and he was doing these interviews. And again, like I said, John, like this, like just so witty with his answers. And he was talking about how these days, and this is in the late '90s, but it's even worse now. And I'm sure you know this, but like these days, like the music that's put out there, it's so manufactured, or maybe there's a team that made it, or somebody put this band together and made it, and that's kind of heinous and gross. And so he was saying, and so like I said, this is like 1998, 1999, and he goes, anytime 3 million people go out and buy something, I'm automatically wary of it, because that means there was a machine and an agenda trying to push this thing. He goes, but the good thing is it's music and it's documented. And if there was a machine behind it, a few months later, everyone's going to hate it, but it's documented. A few years later, if it is good, it stands the test time, that's wonderful. And he goes, it's 1996 and I'm just starting to listen to the Beatles.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. Wonderful way to look at it. So, okay, so if there was someone like me who, I mean, I don't hate Tom Waits. He just he just ain't really my cup of tea. But say someone is wanting to get into Tom Waits. Yes. What are the 5 songs by Tom Waits that you would recommend that they listen to get initiated with him?
Wow. Okay. Who Are You This Time off Bone Machine? Swordfish Trombones off Swordfish Trombones. I'm going to say more than five. Hang Down Your Head, the song Time, and Downtown Train off Raindogs. The whole album, Frank's Wild Years, his first album, which is called Closing Time, which, like I said, is a very just much an almost an acoustic folk slash just easy listening, folk almost, and then there's elements of jazz in it. Record, the song "Old 55," which is a simple song that came out. I mean, I think "Closing Time," his first record, came out in '72 or '73, and no one heard it. But then the Eagles covered it a few years later, and it got big. I think he's one of those artists like Dylan, who a lot of his songs got covered, and that's how people knew them. I could probably come up with 20 songs, but those are 5 or 6. For sure, Who Are You This Time off Bone Machine. That is up there in my probably top 5 favorite records of his.
I keep forgetting, because Old 55 is one of my favorites that the Eagles ever done, and I keep forgetting that Tom Waits wrote that song.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he wrote that, and I certainly know it was. Back then they would put, a label would try to push this song, and I know it wasn't even in their top 3 of songs they wanted to push, and then sure enough, the Eagles covered it, and it became this, big hit for them. And then people are, and I don't know, you actually, so I would tell you then you should go tonight after our interview, look up on YouTube and listen to his version, because it's a beautiful song. As a matter of fact, because I spend a lot of time on the road, whether it's playing music or working, traveling in hotels and on highways, and it is a fun song to either play while you're driving through over state lines, or when you're, let's say, you're in another state, and you just finished playing a show, and you hear that over the loudspeakers in the club you just played at 2 a.m, and there's something very just sentimental and melancholy in the right way. I'm sure, and I'm not using the right words for it, but it always puts me in a good mood.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of music.
Yeah.
So we've got the album that you have chose to talk about for Tom Waits is Raindogs. Now, usually we start the album talk about halfway through the show, but for those of you who don't know, this record is 19 tracks long.
Yes, it is.
19 tracks long. And I'm sure that Tom can just pinpoint where he was when he heard every single track for the first time and the impact.
Yes.
Okay. So without further ado, we will we will jump into that. So just a little bit of the description here. Raindogs is the 9th studio album by American singer-songwriter Tom Waits, released in September of 1985 on Island Records, a loose concept album about the urban dispossessed of New York City. Raindogs is generally considered the middle album of a trilogy that includes Swordfish Trombones and Frank's Wild Years, and it is noted for having Keith Richards guesting on it.
Yes, this was the album. This was the album that I think started their lifelong friendship, which to this day I think they're still very close. And you could look up, Tom Waits and Keith Richards, and there's footage of the Stones playing, in LA like 2 or 3 years ago, and him jumping on stage singing with them, which is really awesome. And they said the funniest things about each other, like, Keith Richards was like, Tom Waits is like an old, madman wizard, in the studio. And Tom Waits, I think, said, he goes, Keith Richards is really good with animals. And they're like, what do you mean? He goes, he just walks to the edge of a field and he puts his arms up, and all of a sudden cows and horses and goats just start coming towards it,
I wonder if it was Keith Richards that said the now famous line about Tom Waits. I think, and I'm probably going to butcher how it goes, but it's something like, Tom Waits' singing voice sounds like you took someone's voice box out, you ran it over with a tractor, doused it in whiskey, and then left it and then hung it in the smokehouse to age.
That probably was him, and that's a really good description. And the funny thing is, sometimes his voice, because he clearly intentionally does things with his voice on songs. Sometimes it's a little too rough for me. I actually really like when he attempts to really try to sing soft. That blows me away. There's a song off of Silver Trombones called Johnsburg, Illinois, which I would suggest you check that song out as well. And it's a little jazz number, but he actually sings in it, and it's like it always just haunts me. It's really beautiful.
Wow. Oh, I'm trying to think of the other famous Tom Cheshire, not Tom Cheshire, but Tom Waits line. The line about Tom Waits' singing voice. It something to the effect of Tom Waits sounds like if a circus fell into a cement mixer.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, yeah.
I've seen 1,000 of those comparisons like that over the years. So a little bit about Raindogs. It says Waits wrote the majority of the album in a 2-month stint in the fall of 1984 in a basement at the corner of Washington and Horatio Streets in Manhattan. According to Waits, it was kind of a rough area, lower Manhattan between Canal and 14th Street, just about a block from the river. It was a good place for me to work, very quiet except for the water coming through the pipes every now and then, sort of like being in a vault. And I noticed it says here that he recorded street sounds and other ambient noises on a cassette recorder to get the sound of the city, and a wide variation of instruments on this as well. Marimba, accordion, double bass, trombone, and banjo, of all things.
Yeah.
And man, I will, once we wrap here, I will definitely take a listen to this, because
another important thing to say is this was my introduction to probably to this day still my favorite guitar player ever, by the name of Mark Ribot, R-I-B-O-T, and he's played on several Waits albums since then. You, as a great guitar player, you should look up Mark Ribot and watch the stuff he's done with Waits, but also watch the stuff he does solo. My brother and I went to see him play with his jazz trio in New York some years back, and it was like probably the epitome of the coolest hip New York thing you could ever see in your life. He's playing like this small club, and we're just looking out the window. We're not looking for him. We don't expect to see him, but there's like a couple of amps on stage, a small little jazz kit, and like an upright bass leaned against the wall, and then this yellow cab pulls out front. Mark Ribot gets out the back of the yellow cab, pops the trunk, grabs his guitar case, and a small amp, jumps on stage, plugs in, and basically just starts doing it. And I'm just like, that's the stuff.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So now we will get into the track list. So,
yeah.
And bear with us, ladies and gentlemen, 19 tracks long this thing is.
Yeah.
So we'll start with side 1. And the lead most track, Singapore.
Well, also remember, so this came out in 1985. I was a kid in 85 and discovered it like 7 years later. But they were right in the description. It is such a New York record. It is like everything about it. And the term Raindogs, at least to me, and I know there's been a few different descriptions over the years, but where I grew up in Queens, or 15 minutes away downtown, the Village and the Lower East Side, Alphabet City, where he was when he wrote this. It wasn't nice. It was dirty. It was filthy. And you would see a lot of stray dogs. And at night, when the streets were just finished raining, and the streets were shiny, and you'd see where puddles were of rain, but also puddles of gasoline and oil, and you'd see these dogs running around. There was just something like haunting, and also just beautiful about it. And so when I first heard the record, that's automatically what I thought of, like, the dogs that we saw sleeping, in puddles of oil in gas stations, on the Lower East Side. Then the gas station doors closed, and then they're just running around in the streets, the shiny concrete in the rain. And it almost like you could picture all of it when you listen to the record. the other thing I was going to say is all 19 tracks of this. It really is a record where, especially with this first song, Singapore, which I'll get into, you close your eyes, you see the dogs, you see the rain, you see the oil, you see, the things that are shiny, you see the lights bouncing off the tar, and it, like, you see colors, like, so he paints a visual, he paints a story, and it's not a rock and roll record. It's like more like you closing your eyes and watching, a Martin Scorsese film.
Wow, that's a great description. And with me being a very detail oriented poet, I feel like I could really appreciate a lot of lyrics in this. So
yeah, Singapore is a wonderful opener. It sounds like wow, what's the best? It sounds like sea shanties, like a pirate song. There's a lot of elements of I would say not really blues, although he would probably say different, but I would say elements of polka for sure, which I've grown to love. I love the accordion. So Singapore is like this, almost like this pirate lead off, telling you the story, and it's probably one of my favorite songs on the record, and it probably is my top 3 of all time in the history of music being recorded and documented. First songs on the first side of an album, like opening tracks.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go from Singapore to track 2, Clap Hands.
Clap Hands, yeah. Clap Hands and Cemetery Polka are, I believe, Cemetery Polka goes on after that. Those two songs are perfect right next to each other. And those, I guess, maybe flirt with blues, but they're also very like New Orleans, free jazz. Now, listen, anyone listening who's maybe a bigger fan or knows more than me would be like, Tom Cheshire has no idea what he's talking about. But that's the beauty of music, and everyone hears things differently. But Clap Hands and Cemetery Polka are 2 wonderful songs that go right next to each other, and they are more piano, and they're slower. They're mid-tempo. Like I think the percussion might just be like a construction boot, banging on the floor, and those things I love. Like you mentioned, I don't know if it was Wikipedia or who described it, the record for you, but yes, they use street sounds. I think they mentioned when they weren't happy with certain drum tracks, they used chest drawers and opened up and closed metal drawers, and you hear that in songs like Clap Hands and Cemetery Polka.
So you covered 2 tracks in one right there. So we will.
See, I'm helping you out, Jon Phipps.
Yeah, man.
How are we doing the time? Remember, and also let me thank you and Renee and Dennis and Tardan Media and everyone watching. This normally should be at 9:00, but this wonderful community that we have, I'm going to finish this. That's why I'm all ready to go. We're going to go see our friend and awesome human and musician, Kim Ware, play this evening. So thank you for doing this early, and that's why I'm doing 2 tracks at once. No, I'm kidding. Well, the next song I have a lot to talk about. So Jockey Full of Bourbon is a very important song. Okay, so Jockey Full of Bourbon might be this is so funny. Jockey Full of Bourbon might be the best song written of all time ever.
Ooh,
that's huge. So the percussion, Stephen Hodges plays a wonderful drum beat. I got to meet Stephen Hodges. He actually stayed at my house when he was touring with Mike Watt and the Black Gang. It was Mike Watt, Nels Cline, and Stephen Hodges, and they stayed at my house like in the mid-90s. And I got to talk to him about recording this album, and he kind of said it was rough working for Tom, which I'm sure it was in the studio. But we had a great night sipping on wine and tea the next morning, talking about this record. And I specifically asked him about this drum beat because that night I actually played it and covered it for him. Chocolate Full of Bourbon, the percussion's amazing. It's fast. The lyrics are amazing. It also, and Tom does this with a lot of his songs. He flirts with, and he says this a lot. He goes, basically all I'm writing are little kids jingles and little kids songs. So the chorus goes, hey little birdie, fly away from home. Your house is on fire, your children are alone. Hey little birdie, fly away from home. Your house is on fire, your children are alone. And that's it, you know. And besides the percussion, they actually use a whip, and you hear throughout the whole song, and it's amazing. But that song blew me away so much that my first band, when I started heavily getting into being this singer and musician that I am, Rent Boys, on our first record, we actually covered Jockey Full of Bourbon when we put out our first record.
Wow.
I think the cover we did was, now listening to it, I think it was horrible. That was in like 96 maybe. But I'm still glad we did it. And then I forgot about it for the longest time. And lately I've been performing solo with 2 or 3 other guys under the name TCB, Tom Cheshire Band, and we've been covering it again. We just did it at a Christmas party a couple of weeks ago, and the response was huge. I think I even said before we played the song, this is the best song ever written. Unfortunately, I didn't write it.
So we will go then.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know how anything would top that.
I know, right? Oh, I mean, basically, so I would say I would automatically go back and listen to later on Old 55 and then play Jockey Full of Bourbon. But really what you should do is just listen to all 19 songs. It probably runs out about just an hour or so, because it goes real quick. But like I said earlier, close your eyes, open the window and let the wind come in, and enjoy the paintings, enjoy the visuals in your head. And it's a beautiful film.
Yeah. So we'll go from Jockey Full of Bourbon to track 5, Tango Till They're Sore.
Yes. Tango Till You're Sore is another, well, I love every song on this record, but there probably will be a few that I may not say as much about. Tango Till You're Sore is another, in my opinion, like kind of like New Orleans weird jazz number, and it would have been perfect on a small record next to Clap Hands and Cemetery Polka. I love his voice in it. And I love the piano, and it's just a great number in between. Like I said, it would fit perfect with Clap Hands and Cemetery Polka, but it's perfect also in between Jockey Full of Bourbon and the next song, which is Big Black Mariah.
Yes. So if you want to talk about that one while we're here.
Yeah, that is his voice is a bit aggro on that one. Big Black Mariah. Yeah, his voice is really rough, but it's wonderful, and I would say that is him. That's definitely more of a blues song, which I'd say I would say that him writing that, he was putting on that morning, he was putting on his Captain Beefheart hat at that time, trying to maybe portray that kind of song, which I'm a huge Captain Beefheart fan, so nothing wrong with that. I've always thought, what his strengths are. Well, one of the best lyricists ever, and also being sardonic and sarcastic and having humor in the right places. But really what his strengths are, go back to that quote I was saying, is I love beautiful melodies telling me horrible things. Like, the guy knows his way in and out of melodies. So any of these songs, if you had someone else, picture your favorite singer, I don't know who it is, John Prine, or someone who just you think has a great singing voice, Dolly Parton, singing a song like Big Black Mariah, it might be your favorite song ever. You might have all this time just been like, well, I just don't like his voice. It sounds like it's been in a cement mixer, which it does, But Big Black Mariah is a great blues number. I like that song a lot. Every song on this record really is I mean, I always think about that when you do a record, like where you put each song. Like every song is in the right spot. Like the intro and the outro, which we'll get to, the last song, like it makes you think, and you're like, wait, no, I can't even picture Big Black Mariah being the second song. No, Clap Hands needs to be the second song. So I love the song. And again, like I said, it's like that morning he goes, I'm gonna write a Captain Beefheart song because I love Captain Beefheart, but Captain Beefheart just did a lot of screaming and he was wonderful and I love everything he did, but there wasn't many hooks. What he did was he said, I like these things. I like Beefheart. I like Howlin' Wolf. I like this, but I'm gonna actually make them as accessible as possible. But there's one problem, my voice, and people might not like that, but they will have hooks for days.
So we will go from that to the only song that was co-written on the record, track number 7, Diamonds and Gold.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Kathleen Brennan. And I really do think he owes, and he has said this in interviews. He's like, listen, she's the restaurant manager and I'm the cook and we do this together. I really do think she is incredibly responsible for his whole sound that he's had for the past 10 or 20 years. She pushed him in this right direction. I love a lot of the other songs she's written with him on other albums. That probably actually is my least favorite the song on the album, but not knocking her or him. It's probably one that, when that comes on, that seems to be when I need another drink out of the fridge or another beer and I walk away. Sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good. Every great album has one track on that. There's one track like that.
But also the beautiful thing about music and us as fans is, it's about timing. That being said, next week I might hear that song and be like, man, what was I thinking? It is my favorite song. I mean, I've said this for years. Like I didn't get T-Rex as a band for years. Now they're one of my favorite bands, and their songs remind me. They remind me of what I want my dreams to sound like.
I can't believe you hated T-Rex once upon a time.
I don't think I hated them. I just didn't get them. And maybe I heard a couple of the big songs too much, and that's what it reminded me of. Yeah. But now listen, we play Cosmic Dancer in the TCB offices a lot.
I've unironically had Jeepster in my head for like a week and a half now, but we're not talking about T-Rex.
I know that's another show, but I love that. I love that song. Thank you, Mark Bowen. Yeah.
Yes.
But now that leads to Hang Down Your Head. And so when I was talking about picture someone else singing these songs, I love the song Hang Down Your Head, and that might be his most poppiest song, at least on this record. You could, if you picture, let's say, Bruce Springsteen singing it, maybe you'd love it. Hang Down Your Head is a wonderful pop song. I love the lyrics to it, and it's one of my favorites. I played in a Tom Waits tribute band with Jeffrey Butzer, who I think you guys know, a few years ago. And we called our band The Piano Was Firewood. And we basically did certainly a number of songs off this record. And one of the highlights we did was we did Hang Down Your Head. It was great.
Wow. So you jumped right into track 8 before I could really. So
I'm so sorry.
No. It's good. It's good.
Here we go. Hang on a second.
It's perfectly good. It's perfectly good.
Yeah.
So we'll close out side 1 with a song that you touched on a little bit earlier, Time.
Yes. Time is another one that's real special, up there with the song Jockey Full of Bourbon, because when I heard this record the first time, I was living in Little Five Points in Atlanta, and I listened to the whole record with a friend, like late at night on my porch. And again, like I said, it was like listening to and watching a great art piece and a great art film, and Jockey Full of Bourbon and Time jumped out, and there couldn't be any more different. Time is a very, very slow song. There's no percussion. It's really beautiful. It might just be guitar and upright bass, although I should listen to it after we hang up, because I've done the song and I've covered it a bunch. So around that time, when I was performing with my band Rent Boys with as a full band, we would do Jockey Full of Bourbon, but I would also do solo shows, just me and a guitar player or me and a piano player, and we would cover Time. And it was a crowd pleaser, and people dug it. We really enjoyed singing it. As a matter of fact, I got asked to. This is so weird. A lady that I worked with, she was a preacher in a Baptist church, and she asked me to sing at her church. They were doing a praise. What a great name of a band, by the way, a praise explosion. And she was like, "Will you perform at my church?" And I was like, "I'd love to perform at your church, whatever." Meanwhile, she had no idea. Like, I'm a rock and roller and stuff, whatever. And I was like, "Yeah, I got some. I got some Christian songs, and I got some songs that I love praise and I love explosions, So I brought Mike Sheena, who played with me in Rent Boys, and we went on stage in front of this church, and we did a couple of our songs, and we did a couple of Tom Waits songs, and I know we did the whole time. And every fourth or fifth line, and whatever the word was, my brain just knew to say. I would say the Lord, or dear Father, or God,
Wow.
and I try to make it sound like a song that would be great and a praise explosion at a church. Meanwhile, there's people doing backflips in the aisles and people throwing hot dogs. It was one of the weird. People were eating hot dogs in a church, and they were like speaking in tongues and doing flips and stuff. And I mean, literally, you can't make this stuff up. And I'm singing the song "Time." I did a couple of my own songs, but like, I think the last line of the song, I think he goes, "When you see a stranger, I took a some, and I forget whatever I said, but I said, and I looked at the preacher or something like that." So after the show, people are like, "That was so wonderful," and talking to us. And then the preacher, the lady, comes up to me, who I'm certainly going to see Monday at work, and she goes, "That was great." She was like, "That was great, Tom. Thank you so much." And then she grabs me by my collar and whispers in my ear. She goes, "But you and I both know those songs had nothing to do with the Lord." So I got my hot dogs, my free hot dogs, and
Dude,
I left, man.
I'm telling you, oh my God, you have to write your memoirs as soon as possible, because you will.
Well, that's why we're gonna have a talk show. That's why we're gonna have a talk show. Me and friends just telling funny stories.
You somehow got away with playing Tom Waits songs in a church. Yeah.
A praise explosion in a Baptist church, and she goes, "You and I," she goes, "That was wonderful, but you and I both know those songs had nothing to do with the Lord." But anyway, so here I am performing again solo, which makes me very happy these days in 2022, which is going to be a great year for me and you. And I've been doing Time again. I do it with B. Kinch. I think you guys have seen me do Time a few times when I do B. Kinch with B. Kinch on the BLT show. I've done it with Sheena. I've done it with a few other people, and it's just a really wonderful song. Actually, what's the redheaded lady that covers it that we love? Yeah, Tori Amos. Tori Amos does a wonderful piano cover. Pull that up, of Time. It's absolutely beautiful. And again, it'll show, maybe you don't like some of his songs because of his voice, but you'll realize the talent that he has, because she basically covers it exactly the way he does it, but it's just her on piano and singing. But it's absolutely gorgeous. Thanks a lot. I had to come up with Tori Amos on my own. You're fired.
I should just stop right here, because nothing's gonna top getting hot dogs hucked at you in a church.
Listen, you cannot make this stuff up. It was like a scene of the Blues Brothers. People were doing backflips, people were talking in tongues, and then I see a guy walking by with a cart and people eating hot dogs, and I'm on stage singing, "It's time, it's time, and 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 it's time, it's time, it's time that you love. Dear Lord, it's time. You and I both know
the only thing this story lacks is snakes. That's the only thing this story lacks.
Yeah.
So now, after all of that, we've got about 16 minutes to cover another 10 tracks. So
we got this. We can do this, because the next song is Raindogs. The next song is Raindogs, which is absolutely. Wait, is the next song Raindogs? What is the next song? what's the next song?
Next song
Raindogs?
is Raindogs. Yes.
Yeah, that is a
was
beautiful song. That I'm running out of descriptions, like just to say, but let me just say, I love Raindogs. I love the words in it. I love the melody, it's also another one that's not as fast as Singapore, the opener, but the percussion in it is phenomenal. Like it's really like you're basically doing this to it. It's amazing.
So we'll go from the title track to the first of two instrumentals on the
Hmm.
record, Midtown.
Yes. He is so good at doing that, and I believe Cassie, my partner on 3 and the 1s and 2s, she was talking about this because she's so good at doing research on this kind of stuff. We were talking about a couple of his records. It might have been when we were talking with Butzer. I believe that at this time in his period of his career, when he was creating, he wanted to make sure he did every album. He did an instrumental, and then he did an instrumental with just like spoken word. And that one, I think they were just doing like a jam, an open jam session. Him and a few guys in a room and fooling around with like pump organs and farfisas and accordions and I don't necessarily know if and I could be wrong. It sounds like something they were jamming on, and someone wrote like this one melody, and they went with it and just recorded it and documented it. But I love where it is in the record. I love how it sounds, and I love the space that it gives in between of numbers that may be more abrasive.
So we will now go. Let me get myself back on screen here.
Yeah, right. Hey guys, everybody.
Yes, everyone is streaming it. Everyone is loving this episode, by the way.
Everyone loves the hot dogs in church story.
Yes, come for Tom Waits, stay for hot dogs getting shipped out.
I gotta go see my friend Kim Ware rock and roll at Eddie's Attic later.
Oh God, it's so. Oh God, don't tell me you're gonna huck hot dogs at poor Kim.
No way, man. No way. No, I'm really enjoying talking about this, and I know what I'm going to be listening to either later on tonight or first thing tomorrow morning over coffee is this whole record. So I'm really excited. Normally, I try to go ahead and listen to the whole record, but this happened pretty quick. You and I were texting, and we're like, "Let's do this." And I've gotten chances to listen to spurts of it, but I haven't been able to listen to the whole record. So I'm just as excited as you are, and I'm really excited to hear what you say after you listen to the whole thing.
Well, I'll get back to you about that. So number 12, track number 12. I have to auctioneer it this because we got 13, about to be 12 minutes left.
No, we got this, my brother.
Yeah. So track 12, Ninth and Hennepin.
Yes. That. So that's another one that I would say would be like, because that is a spoken word one. It's a great spoken word, and I love the instruments on it. We can move on to the next song because it's not hooky. It's not like songs like songs like Downtown Train, which we'll get to, or Jockey Full of Bourbon. They have these things that are just like, no matter how much you fight it, they're anthemic, and they get under you, and you wake up in the morning. I mean, to me, I've always said that like a great song or a great poem, like a poem, like the last line punches you in the face, this 1-2 punch. I want to wake up the next morning repeating it, and the songs like Hang Down Your Head do that to you. So Ninth and Hennepin is perfect where it is. It's a nice little piece, but it's also maybe to go, make yourself another gin and tonic. You can walk away and listen from afar. It's blasting in the living room, and you're in the kitchen making yourself, a martini or some sangria.
There you go. So track 13 now, Gun Street Goyle.
Yes, that's a great one, and that one I would put in the same. I would put it in the same, like it's similar to like, Big Black Mariah. It's a great blues number that I love, and it fits perfectly in the record. But I probably wouldn't, when I put on my record, go put that on first. It just fits great in the movie and in the soundtrack.
So track 14 now, Union Square.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with what Union Square is. Union Square is on 14th Street in the Lower East Side. So I imagined that, and it talks about it in that description. He was living right down there. It is probably not only my favorite place in New York, but one of my favorite places in the whole world. There's just something about it, even to this day, where New York isn't the same. But you're always going to see street performers and people selling paintings in the street, and someone dancing, and the next to them is someone playing violin, and there's a guy doing, a trick with dice and boxes, and then there's a graffiti artist, and then there's a kid tap dancing, and then there's a Cuban lady, making sandwiches while she's spanking her kid. There's just a lot going on, and it's eclectic and beautiful. And in the 80s, it had to have been that times a million. There might be an old man who's broke selling his wedding ring, and then there's people selling books, and then there's a guy saying, "Hey, I'll tell you a perverted poem for $1." He just I think he wanted to paint that with the noises that were going on.
Yes. So we will go. Okay, so we just did Union Square. So now we'll go to track 15, Blind Love.
Blind Love. I think I think Keith's on that as well. And I think he might even be doing some backing vocals on it. Man, I could be wrong. Like I said, I don't know who in here is going to text me and be like, "Man, Tom, you don't know anything." But I guarantee they're going to say they love the hot dog and the church story. So I think we're good. Blind Love is a beautiful song. I could picture maybe even Bruce. So you got to understand, Bruce Springsteen and Tom Waits came out around the same time, like almost the same year, and they knew of each other, and everyone, in books says there was like a race in whether it was the fans or people in the music business saying who is going to be the next Bob Dylan. And they were like, which one will be the next Bob Dylan? And maybe people thought Bruce was, which is funny because Tom Waits wrote a song called Jersey Girl, but it didn't get famous until Bruce Springsteen covered it, Blind Love is another song that I could almost picture. If Bruce sang it, it probably would have gotten more play because it's a real pretty number. And also, it's got Keith Richards on it. How awesome is that?
So we will go from there to track 16, Walking Spanish.
Ooh, that's a good one. Walking Spanish down the hall. Walking Spanish down the hall. Awesome, jazzy. I think it's jazzy. I would say Walking Spanish down the hall fits wonderful with like Tangled to Your Soul. So if he put out a 4-song record with Clap Hands, Cemetery Polka, Tangled to Your Soul, Tangled to Your Soul, and Walking Spanish down the hall, it'd be like the best 4-song record ever. Very New Orleans feel to it. Very loose. The piano parts have real cool percussion sounds. Not traditional percussion instruments either. And it's like a spoken word piece, but also more than that because he goes up with his voice, and the chorus he's like, "Yeah, she's walking Spanish down the hall." Love it, and it's a great way to head towards your outro of this thematic record or film that you're listening to.
Yeah. So track 17, one you mentioned earlier and one you said you absolutely loved, though you heard about 3 different versions of it before you heard the Tom Waits version, Downtown Train.
Yes, and his version is completely my favorite. But again, I love how open-minded is. Okay, we got 8 minutes. I love how open-minded he is. I remember someone trying to insult Rod Stewart, for doing it, and Tom Waits seems like such a nice guy. He said, "Listen, I've met Rod at a few parties with my wife over the years, and he's been nothing but a sweetheart and a gentleman." And he even thanked me, for letting him, do the song. And he's like, as far as people not liking it, he's like, listen, him covering that song, I bought my kids a pool in the backyard. So
Wow.
I absolutely love his version. I love the video. He's got the video it's black and white and looks like an old epic piece. He's got Rocky Marciano, the old the boxer in the video, and he's like complaining about this guy singing. He goes, every night he's doing this, every night he's doing this. And then you just see Tom Waits, a shadow of him on the street, and he's like, when I see you tonight, he's like, he's like all those Brooklyn girls, you're shining like a new dime. And the poetry in it is for me it's again, as a writer myself and a songwriter and a writer of poems, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do it half-assed. It takes twice as long to fix it. I'm going to shoot for the stars and be the best I can be. So when I write, I think of songs like this, and I think of records like this, and I try to make that like that's the bar, and I need to do it that good.
So the penultimate track on this, the second of the two instrumentals, Bride of Raindog, and the shortest, only minutes.
Yeah, that's there's parts of that are almost abrasive and unlistenable. But I love it because I love music that makes you think and also maybe even feel uncomfortable. And again, it's perfect because it gets noisy at certain parts, and like a few other songs towards the end of this playlist or this record, it prepares you for like, wait a minute, eventually this thing is going to end, and it's right around the corner. I love it. I don't think any of these songs, even the instrumentals, I don't think any of it is accidental. I think it's well thought out, and each one is put in its specific place to make you feel and think something. So yeah, I love Bride of Raindogs.
And so the 19th and final track on this record, with about 2 minutes, 40 seconds to spare, maybe.
We are doing it. Well, that's Anywhere I Lay My Head, which is, you're a reader and you're a writer. You know that term. It's usually a bit of term that we hear of, like turn of the century, people hop trains, people who are hobos. Anywhere you lay your head or anywhere you take your hat off and hang on a hook, that's your home for the night. And, what a great closer. And you think of the dogs roaming the streets, and you think of hobos roaming the streets like Alphabet City or Lower East Side, New York City, in the winter or a cold like fall night. And the lines, he's like, he goes, at one point he goes, he's so a mess. He goes, my heart is in my shoes. I mean, what a freaking line. He goes, my heart is in my shoes. I mean, I've felt like my heart has fallen down to my crotch when I've been sad and a mess before, right below the belt, maybe. But and then maybe me, myself, my whole body fell into a gutter, into a wet puddle, and cried. But I don't know if my heart has ever been fallen lower than my hips and fallen in my shoes. But he goes, yeah, anywhere I hang my head, that's where I'm going to call my home. And then it stops, or the vocal stops, and then it's just a loud jazz. There's saxophones going, and you picture like the sounds that maybe of those early tapes that he did of just like horns beeping in the Lower East Side, and that's what it sounds like, and that's the closer. And it's just as important as Singapore being the best opener of the record. It is insanely like perfect outro, like a wonderful, because like a live show, I think a sick big song that's anthemic should end live. Yeah. But on a record, I don't think that's what you need. I want the person to be like, holy cow, what just happened? I just get hit by a 2x4, in the head by a stranger. Now I'm walking and I'm a little mess and I'm thinking, and that's what it does. He's like, anywhere I hang my head, that's where I'm going to call my home. And then all of a sudden, you hear, and it's like New York City, horns, jazz, meets New Orleans. And again, this is just me, John, the way I think of it. And everyone else could think something completely different. It's and that's the beauty of it. Music, we all listen to it differently and take it differently.
Yeah. So Tom, thanks a million for coming on the show. It has been just a thrill to have you on. Tell Kim I said hello. And
I will do. I'm about to go put on a mask and do the right thing and see her. And she's an angel on that guitar and microphone. Thank you guys. Good luck with the show. I love everything you guys are doing. And we're in it together in 2022. Yes. We are going to kill it.
Yes, we are, sir. So have a great rest of your night. Like I say, tell Kim we say hello and that we love her. And to all of you out there with your sweet voices, your most sweet voices showing love and support and kindness, thank you. Mm-hmm. Have a great rest of your night, one and all. Take care, much love, and may God richly bless you all.